I love you, Heartworm.
Welcome to another episode of AutisHim, Black Files and Autism. My name is Tyrone. I got my co-hosts next to me, Nick and Lonnie. This episode, we're going to be talking about transitioning back to school. We are about a couple weeks out from our kids starting school again. Some of our kids have already started. So we're just going to talk about, hey man, the transitioning back. Our kids have had, a pretty good summer. They've learned a lot, done a lot. They've been chilling a lot, and now it's time to get back in that grind. So I know Lonnie was talking about, one of his kids actually already started back, and now, his youngest is actually, starting in a couple weeks, which mine is too. So is Nick. So Lonnie, man, take it away, man. How you feeling about your kid transitioning back to school?
Man, today was the first day of school, which was good. We got up early today to get him there. We get up at 6:30. We can wake him up. He downstairs dressed already. This dude dressed, ready to go, bag packed. He's like, we like, whoa, slow down, slow down. So that part is good. So it's good to see that he's excited about it, up and going, running. You want that because it hasn't always been that way as far as like him going to school. So that's a really good sign. So excited about that. Just looking forward to it, man. It's weird having a fifth grader. You know what I mean? And it's like he's starting to, grow up a little bit. And he just started talking about girls a little bit. I'm not ready for that discussion. That's a different conversation. But so I'm excited, man. I think this will be a good year. He in the fifth grade. My youngest two going to third grade. So looking forward to it. And I think my big push this year is just to like start seeing, um, where he likes things the most. You know what I mean? I want to get him involved in more things where he can take the lead and push. If you like this, I'm gonna give you more exposure to that and get out the way. So I want to get out the way as far as being the person initiating stuff, and I want to follow his lead a little bit this year, a little bit more.
Cool. Yeah, for sure, man. I agree. Nick, man. So how are you feeling about transitioning back into
Honest,
the school year?
no, no, no. Honestly, I would have been a little bit more nervous. However, my son is going to a new school. School's all boys. Previous year, he went to a school with both genders, and over the summer, he had the opportunity to take part in a camp at the new school. And so I think that opportunity, that experience, not only helped him, but I think it helped us be more comfortable with his new school. He now knows his way around the building because he's been in there. Over the summertime, he has the opportunity to meet some kids who is also going into his grade. My son is going into the fourth grade this up and coming year. And so he has displayed some gumption over the summer. I didn't think he had. And so him going to the school with fourth graders through eighth graders really gave me pause before the summer. But over the summer, he's had an opportunity to interact with fourth graders through eighth graders. And he's not backing down from anybody, so he's standing 10 toes down, he's standing up for himself, and it is really comforting to see him interacting with various grade levels over the summer. Now, going into the school system, I still have a little bit of caution, I still have a little bit of pause. I'm not going to say I'm 100% on anything, because in the school year, things are a little more strict. Timing is longer. The activities from the summer program to the school year are different. Even though you have some of the same people who will be inside of the school, you'll still have other individuals and other kids who will attend the school that didn't go to the summer program. And so um, there is some hesitation. I struggle with my son going into a school where there are uniforms. His previous 3 years, he didn't have to wear a uniform. This up and coming year, he'll have to wear a uniform. I struggle with his sensitivity because he has sensitive skin as well. So, is that going to be a part of the distraction in the class? Him wearing clothing that isn't comfortable because it's uniform? Will it be uh, an opportunity for him to not care, on the other side of the coin? So I'm not going to sit and say that I am 100% comfortable with every single thing, but I am more comfortable now with him going to the school than I was at the beginning of the summer, strictly because he's had an opportunity to go. And so we're trying to prepare him as well for the school year, because his school day will start extremely early. And so now between this week and next week, we're going to have to get him up earlier so that he's ready to go. He's going to have to go to sleep and change his routine slightly, which we would definitely have to monitor and see how he interacts with himself, with our family, and then the school with this change in the shift in the schedule. But it's definitely one of those things that I think he's excited about because we're looking forward to it, but I personally I am what they say cautiously optimistic in regarding the move. Todd, what you think?
No, our son is, staying at the same school that he was at last year. He's been at the school for about 3 or 4 years now, going into the fifth grade. And so it's always a challenging time transitioning him back from the summer into school, mainly because I think that, my son enjoys like his free time. He enjoys, being able to play the game. He enjoys being able to play with his toys. He enjoys being able to go places with myself, my wife, and his siblings. And then when it's time to get back to business, to get on the schedule, it's a little challenging for him. Like he will, kind of fight it a little bit. You talked about getting him back on the schedule when it comes to bedtime. Like my son, I've allowed him to stay up a little half hour later, and now he got to go back to that 9:30 bedtime, and I know he's gonna be upset about it. And so it's one of those things where you just got to prepare your mind for it. And even with school over the summer, like we did some school with him, my wife did some school with him, but we didn't do as much as we should have. We wanted him to have like a break because he worked so hard during the school year, so we wanted him to have a break. But now that we started doing some work with him a little bit more often, trying to get his mind back acclimated to that grind, he's having issues. Like he don't want to do it, or he can do it and he'll do it fast and not really take his time. And I mean, I give him credit. He'll give us the right answers, but it's too fast. Like he's missing things in the assignments, or he'll maybe mess up and get upset and have to go back and do it. So it's gonna be a little challenging. I think some of the things he's looking forward to is, he really enjoys his classmates. So seeing them again and talking to them again. We don't know who his teacher is going to be. He has orientation next week, or I'm sorry, not orientation, open house. So there's open house next week. So we're going to go ahead and go to that. And so we're excited to see who his teacher is. The school day he goes to is phenomenal. And so they have good teachers. And so I'm just interested to see who his teacher is, to see, expectations of him and expectations of us for her, or him, whoever it is. And we're just excited to see how the school year is going to play out, man. He's getting older. He's changing. His language is changing. His body is changing, and just to see all of that. And I can't remember what it was like me going into the fifth grade. Like I can't think back that far, but I know that my summers were always like I had really fun summers growing up. So it was hard even for myself being neurotypical not to go back to school and be on, like, to be on that schedule, that grind schedule, having to get up early, having to do homework, having to make sure I'm getting my school clothes before school and get my lunch packed, all of that stuff. So it's gonna be challenging, man. my wife spends a lot of time with my son because I'm at work all the time. So, it's for her, it's really challenging because she's not only, dealing with my younger son, she's dealing with my other three too. And on a different scale because, I got two pretty much full grown adults in the house, but I got a 15-year-old and, he needs attention as well because he's going to the 10th grade. And so that's a different level of academics and a different level of social, like being social and things like that. So he going through his phases and things like that. So all around the house, man, transitioning from the summer to the school year is just, it's a grind, man. It's a grind. I think it'll start to weed itself out probably in October. Once September, we're just kind of filling things out, getting a constant schedule going. But in October is when it'll start to fill itself out. But I want to ask you brothers a question. So do both of your kids like enjoy like going back, like they're excited, they're ready to get back in the classroom, see their teachers, their classmates, or is it like it's like a slow grind transition, like I kind of want to go back but I don't kind of want to go back? Like, what's your experience with that?
Man, the end of last school year, it was a significant drop off in terms of my kid, and just I was surprised at how hard he took it, if that made sense. So the school had a summer program, a summer camp. We thought about it, but it was super pricey. But it took a good week or two for him to bounce back to himself. So this next summer, we're planning on putting him in that program in the summer camp for at least a couple weeks to help him because we had never seen him like that, how he sort of fell off. He, like I said, he ran back. He ran into school today. He was excited. I think he enjoys being away from us, being away from me in particular, because I'm like, look, I got a full-fledged summer school curriculum. My curriculum harder than school. I'm Dennis Rodman. I'm hard in the paint. We doing work. We got work to do every day, all day. So they like we getting away from this man. But hey, funny story for you. You mentioned your son has uniforms, right? Picture day was the last year before. Picture day, my son never wears khakis, never wears like nice clothes. So you dress him up nice for picture day. After the pictures, this dude teacher called us like, Lonnie said his stomach hurt, he doesn't feel good, and he's grabbing his stomach or whatnot. And so we go pick him up. It was the pants. He ain't like how the pants felt. So ain't nothing wrong with this boy. He up here got us at the school because he's sick. He ain't like the pants. And so uh, we looking forward to seeing what kind of nonsense he get involved with this year as far as that's concerned.
I mean, as I think my son is kind of excited. We haven't met his teacher. I think I have an idea who his teacher might be, but I'm not sure. We'll definitely find out when we go to back to school night coming up and see what type of program they'll be running, the information that they'll be given. It's just definitely a different style than my son is accustomed to because he's in his previous school, he stayed in one classroom the majority of the time.
Okay.
So, what I understand with this up and coming school is that he will have to transition from classroom to classroom, like you may do in middle school. Now, he's not in middle school yet. So, this could be like a change for him because it, he's used to being comfortable in a given space when it comes to academics. However, my son is also diagnosed with autism and ADHD. So the movement from class to class may also help him because it's a change of scenery that he may need versus staying in one classroom all day long. So we're definitely trying to see, how that's going to work out. But I think for the most part, the adjustment hasn't hit him yet because over the summer, my son has had an active summer. So he's been in two different summer camp programs, and all of them started somewhere around like 8:30, and so which is a traditional time for most kids to go to school. So he still had to get up. He still had to get up and get ready, et cetera, et cetera. But when the school year starts, it's even going to be earlier than 8 to 8:30. So I think that might be harder than definitely like the school experience itself. I think he might be looking forward to going back to the school, uh, especially because of the time he spent. But I don't know if he's like super excited because there's still information he doesn't know, like who his teacher is going to be, what extracurricular activities he would like to participate in. Because I know the school has some sports, and those sports have already started. Because I know the school has like a basketball team, and so these guys have already started playing basketball and get him ready, so to speak, and some other sports as well. But my son's not an athlete; he's a thinker, and that's fine too. So one of the reasons why we sent him there is because they have a robotics camp, or a robotics club or something to that effect. So I'm trying to see if he would be interested in that. Hopefully, that increases his likelihood of wanting to go back and wanting to do work and wanting to do well. But we'll definitely have to see where his excitement level is when he gets more information, because right now it could be high, but as soon as he goes to back to school night and says a teacher he doesn't really like or doesn't really know, all of that could drop off and he could be like, I don't even want to go to school anymore. He doesn't have a choice. He's going to go, but he may not like it.
Hey, you know what? You just reminded me of when I was in the classroom, student teaching, and doing some work at a couple of different schools. You'd be surprised the number of issues associated with transitioning from classroom to classroom. So some of the fixes we had to put in was kids would go from one classroom to the other before the bell rang. Kids needed headphones, had headphones. If there was a fire alarm or fire drill a certain day, we got them out of the school early, because that bell ringing like that, you're going to have problems. And so that's something to watch out. It's also some kids, elopement might pick up there, because walking through a crowded hallway, all that commotion, the bells, the kids, that's too much for a lot of kids. And so a significant number of kids actually had plans on how we got from classroom A to classroom B. And some of that was like taking them to the class, leaving early to get there before the bell, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something to be mindful of and watch. And so some kids will never be able to sit in the cafeteria and eat with other kids. It's just too much. Same thing with recess and things of that nature. So I keep an eye on that.
Well, I definitely appreciate it. And I did consider that transition period, because sometimes my son does have issues with those transitions from class to class. But hopefully, he's had to do it over the summer and do classroom to classroom. So my hope is that some of his anxiety is decreased, but you bring up a good point. There are going to be more students in hallways during the school year than there was in the summer program. So that plays a huge part. And I totally 100% agree with you, Lonnie. That plays a huge part. And so what we may end up having to do is inputting that early leaving from a classroom to different classrooms as a part of his paperwork, his IEP, so that then becomes something that doesn't hinder him from learning and doesn't stop him from getting to where he needs to go and wandering or eloping or anything to that nature. So we may need to definitely put some verbiage in his IEP to make sure that he's squared away. I appreciate it. Thanks, bro.
One of the things you guys mentioned is talking about, like, Nick, you haven't met your son's teacher yet. I haven't met mine. And so one of the things that get me sweating in the eyebrows is, is me and his teacher, or my wife and his teacher, going to have a good relationship? And I get nervous about that because so far, my son has had really good relationships with his teachers, and the school as a whole hasn't let me down, and I don't want them to start now. I really don't. So I'm hoping and praying that whoever his teacher is, we have a good relationship, that we have some type of understanding. My son is he's known throughout the school. They know who he is. They know who we are. So I'm hoping that has some traction. But I'm very nervous about, who his teacher is going to be. because so far we've had a great experience, and I would like to continue that experience with my son. And life is already stressful enough, man. To add that on top of your plate when you're already worried about your kid being in school, that's just it's crazy. So yeah, I really I'm hoping that he has a teacher he had last year, that she's teaching like the same, like she's teaching multiple grades. That's what I'm hoping, but I don't think that's gonna happen. I think that he's gonna transition over to somebody else because like you guys are saying, they're moving to different classrooms as well. Even though it's online, they're still meeting with different teachers. But his main teacher, I'm like hoping like, okay, like we let's build this thing off right. Like let's do this the right way, because I don't want any problems, any issues throughout the school year. And for any parents out there listening, or any caretakers out there listening, I would say, and I've said this in a previous episode, like try to make yourself as known as you can inside the school, because they will remember you if something happens positively, and they'll remember you if something happens negatively. So, yeah, that's one thing I'm really nervous about is my son's teacher, man, because I'm telling you, bro, I ain't about it this year. I ain't about it this year. So we did had a little rough year. So say the year ain't over yet. So it gotta be smooth sailing from now on. And I'm telling you, this is not the year for those type of things to arrive. I cannot have it this year. So I'm like you said, Nick. I am cautiously optimistic that he will have a really good teacher and a good experience this school year. Of course, we know it ain't sunshines and rainbows all the time. Things will happen. But moving on to like same topic, but just a different place. When your kids are going back to school, um, do you notice any certain habits they were doing in the summer that have changed since when they go back to the school year? I mean, it doesn't have to be like this school year; it could be previous school years. Do you guys notice any habits or any different quirks that your child may either develop or they didn't have in the summertime that all of a sudden you're seeing now that they're back in school?
My kid he'll be able to tell me everything everyone is eating at lunch, right? And that's kind of weird, but like it's a way for me to slip in like fruits and vegetables. My friend Addie, she has strawberries and grapes. You want some grapes? Sure. So it's been like we've been okay. Eat some more vegetables, dude. So little things like that have been good with him so far. He's the peer pressure in a good way. I think some of that we're noticing, and I think some of that is also helping. His school is for kids with developmental differences, learning differences. So only like 10% of the kids are on the spectrum. The other kids have math specific, reading specific, other disabilities, and so it's I mean they're neurotypical in a sense. You know what I'm saying? So he's getting that exposure and experience and seeing how they move, how they operate, and it's like helping him know how to carry himself a little bit better in a safe environment. So that's been something I've noticed.
You know what? As I think back over the years, I'm going to say I don't think he's carried any quirks. I do know the transition of at the start of the year has always kind of been iffy, especially with a new environment and especially with a new teacher. However, this up and coming year is different because he's had some experiences before. Um, but in previous years, there has been transition issues, whereas the first couple of weeks are challenging because it's so new, because I'm trying to understand uh, what the rules and the regulations are. I'm trying to understand who these new people are. I'm trying to be in an environment where nobody understands who I am. I'm not really connecting. My son has some social quirks and cues that some other kids can't relate to, and so it makes me not like other kids because I'm so sensitive about my son. However, I am like open-minded enough to know that it's not always, somebody else or another child's fault, or it's just, kids just don't relate. And so the one thing I do know is that once my son gets acclimated to his space, once that hump of transition uh, happens, then he's normally, ready to go. But in the past, it's taken, you know 2-3 weeks and sometimes a month for him to become, squared away with a new environment, with a new teacher, with new students. But I am hoping the hump this year is not so drastic because of his previous experience in the school. And so I think learning the systems will be a challenge for, not just my son but our family as well. And I'll tell any parent, if you have the opportunity, only if you have the opportunity, take off as much as the first week of school as you can, if you have that opportunity, if you need to, because it helps. I've seen it help my son with the transition piece. If you need to be available to for your child in that first week or two, if depending on whatever your leave or work situation looks like, um, if you have the opportunity to take some time off, take some time off. So if something does happens to happen, you know you can be there. You can help guide through the transition. I know growing up my parents used to do it, even though they didn't stay at the school, or I wasn't diagnosed with something on the spectrum. The first week of school my parents were always home, and so just in case somebody needed to call, there was information missing from a file, or I know in certain areas immunizations are big before school year starts or something to that effect. So you may have to, have an appointment with your pediatrician or something to that notion. So having your availability, if possible, please understand. I know everybody can't take off the first week of school, but your availability during that first week of school, I think, could aid and help in the transition for not just kids on the spectrum, but even some neurotypical kids, to know that mom and dad are at home, and it can help the school to let them know that mom and dad are at home. Just in case something goes wrong, it could be a wardrobe malfunction or anything else. And so having that first week availability, I think, can really really help.
To that point, Nick, and your kid and my kids' open houses next week. I want to encourage parents, families to go to open houses. I don't remember going to them a lot when I was young. I know I would go when I would transition to a new like school. So, for example, when I finished elementary, I would go to the open house for middle school, and then same thing in high school. But I don't remember going every single year. And I think that's important. If you can, if you are available, if you have the time, please go to your child's open house to get to know the teachers, the administration that they're going to be interacting with. I cannot stress that enough. When I first started, like when I first had kids, and my wife was all about going to open houses, like I was like, they stupid ass shit. I didn't want to go to that stuff. And I was just, and I end up going, and I mean, it's amazing because I really got a chance to sit down and talk to the principal, or talk to sometimes the superintendents there, and I talk to my kids' teachers, and I talk to like some of the kids that my child is going to be interacting with, because you'd be surprised, man. Some of them kids, like, they just they're excited to be back in school, and they'll run up on you sometimes like, hey, how you doing, and just talk to you. So I encourage anybody to go and just talk to the individuals that are running that school during open house. It's very, very important to do. And again, man, I did not believe in them when I first had kids. I thought they were dumb. I didn't think they served the point. And then as I started going, I realized like, oh yeah, okay, now I know who that person is. So if my child has interaction with this person, whether it's positive or negative, I can point this person out. Or just building that relationship, that networking, right? It's like, okay, yes, my child has a parent that is very, very active and involved in his life. So you will be seeing me throughout the school year. So they keep that in the back of their mind. So yeah, like I encourage all parents, all caretakers to go to open houses because it's very, very, very important. Lonnie, do you want to add anything to that about open houses, or just like is go ahead.
Yeah, I will add. There's two things I wanted to say is that the time part is important in that um, you kind of have to help with that transition, whether you have time or not, because that folks with kids on the spectrum, we're always getting calls, right? There's a lot of soft suspensions that happen where kids aren't actually suspended, aren't kicked out of school, but you get calls to come pick them up. Come pick them up. They're having a bad day, having a meltdown. So that happens a lot with our kids, and so to the extent that you can, in the beginning of that school year, if you can be on the same page with that teacher, or to the extent possible, it can sort of help limit some of that potentially. But the one other good thing I wanted to say is that IEPs happen throughout the year, whatever, and so do not let your child's IEP meeting be the first time you showed up at the school. Don't let it be the first time you talk to the teachers. Don't let it be the first time you know how they're doing as far as school is concerned. And so, really, in that first week, second week, my son, first day of school today, he came home with a sheet of paper and he gets check marks if he does well, right? He can get points, 28 points, and he gets his star. And so, that's their progress monitoring. Every single kid in school comes home with a sheet of paper every day. Check, check, check. They're good. And so that's sort of a easy way to see, tell us how he's doing, what he's working on, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing too, there are easier ways of doing that. Some people have happy face, sad face. Something as simple as that can be a way for a teacher to communicate how your kid is doing, particular day or particular class. And so there's other ways of just um, they're low cost communication methods that teachers can use to help you. And so you can put them in your IEP. You can say, I want to understand what my kid is doing every week. I want to understand. I want some method. It's August now. Don't tell me in October my baby's struggling with X, Y, and Z. And so really get involved early as soon as you can with two things that I kind of wanted to mention. If it's the IEP, it's too late. My youngest son's IEP for speech, and his meeting is in January. So that's too late to really, what I'm saying, to really affect change, because if that's half the year. So think about that.
And I've fought with IEP in schools, for at least the last year. Like I've been in these meetings for all of the families out there. I've been in these meetings. You can call an IEP meeting anytime you would like. So let me just call your IEP meeting. I personally believe at the beginning of the school year, you should have an IEP meeting. You should set the standard. You should know that, yes, the school should know what data to be pulling off of your child. My son had a progress report sheet, just like Lonnie was describing. His had points on it. And so you should be able to sit with your team and get your team together, get your doctor together, get your, if you have alternative therapies, BCBAs or therapists, grab them. If you have an advocate, grab an advocate and get your team squared away. So at your IEP meeting, you're as prepared as you possibly can be with whatever documentation and information that pertains to your child in this new environment, to set standards, not just academically, but for accommodations. So if your child needs a wiggle chair, make sure that there's a wiggle chair. If your child needs early release from class, make sure that that's in there. Depending on the severity of your child's diagnosis, you need to make sure that your child is in the best situation possible early. If you got a call, I've had an IEP. I've had between 8 to 10 IEP meetings at my son's previous school. So they knew us. The administration knew us. The teacher knew us. Everybody inside of that school building. If they did not meet us personally, somebody told them about us. They would see us every day. They would see us every morning, every afternoon. And so at the end of
You're gonna have
this,
us come up missing, man. You gonna
listen,
have us. They're gonna be like, they
listen.
said have an IEP every month. We gonna come up
If
missing. You
if
about to
you
get us
need
hurt.
to have one, and I'll speak to the parents out there. If you need to have an IEP every month, have it, because nobody's going to fight for your baby more than you will. This is your child. This is your son. This is your daughter. You will put, you will go through whatever for your child. So if you need to have one every month, have one every month. But I will say this about the IEP and any other school documentation: you need to have data. If you have goals, the school needs to be able to show progression or regression towards the goals on your documentation. So, if you're saying that your son or daughter needs to be able to raise their hand every day for 5 days straight, there needs to be some type of written documentation that's saying that Johnny is raising his hand this week 2 days out of the week. And then the following week, Johnny's raised his hand 3 days out of the week. And so there needs to be something that tracks in times of IEP. Now, I will say this, and I'm going to put this caveat in there. Right now in school systems, if you look at the news, you see a whole bunch of shortages across the country. And you see shortages not just in general teachers, but especially in special education environments. You've seen shortages across the country. I'm not saying that all schools have everything, but I will say this: if you are in a school system that does not have the resources to support your child, reach out to the administration as soon as you possibly can to see what else can be done for your child. They may be able to move your child to a school that has better resources and the information and the help that you need for your child. So if you're in school and your school starts at the end of August, or if it's already started and it's September 15th, and you're not seeing any of the information that you provided on your documentation in that classroom, call a meeting in October. I stopped by the school on September 15th, and I did not see my child have X, Y, and Z. We need to have a meeting. What's going on with my child? If by November things aren't getting better, start looking at your school systems and following the procedures of that school system to see what needs to happen to put your child in a better situation than the one that they're currently in. If they're able to move them, then put your child in a better situation. If they're able to give them more things and accommodations, get what you need for your child. Because nobody, and I'll reiterate it, nobody will fight for your child more than you will. And go to the highest of the education systems and levels in your area, local, state. If you need to go to the Department of Education, go to the Department of Education federally. Do whatever you need to do for your child to make sure that they have what they need.
Agreed. And I'm gonna say this: beginning of the school year, Nick is right. You want to fight for your child to the umpteenth degree. You want to go to the highest of the height. For all my parents out there that are impatient like myself, you get so many hours and days, and then I'm taking my child out of here and putting them somewhere else. So that's just my opinion. I am not sitting here saying don't fight the power. Definitely fight the man. Fight all of the barriers. Break them all down. But with me, they only got so many months. And then it's like, okay, looks like we moving on to a different school. So, because ain't nobody listen, ain't nobody got time to be fighting people for years and years and years. If y'all want to do right by my child, don't worry, we'll move on to somewhere else. And like everybody was saying on this call, you don't want to wait until January, February, March to start, making noise. You want to start making noise right away. Something that Nick touched on about getting your team together. I want to emphasize, if you do have a strong team, if you have ABA therapists, if you have all these different therapies with you, if you have an advocate, and they're 100% with you. If the school says to you, because I know someone that this happens to, if the school says to you, sorry, you cannot have these people in your IEP meeting, they are lying. That is not true. It is a bald-faced lie. Don't believe it, and that might be a red flag to get your kid up out of there. So I just think about those things. Like Nick and Lonnie was saying, you can call an IEP meeting whenever you want. Whenever you feel your child is not getting the resources and the attention that they deserve, you call that meeting and you have your team behind you. You have the support behind you. And if anyone says they cannot be a part of these meetings, they are wrong. I've said this in the not last episode, but a previous episode. If you know 95% more than a special education person, that's another red flag. Get them up out of there. So beginning of the school year, if you come in there with all the stats and analysis and the teams, and you know more than they do at the beginning of the school year, you might want to do school of choice. I'm just saying, like, you just think about it.
Research your options. Definitely, Tyrone is right. Research your options. Some areas are easier to move around schools, and then in other areas. So some states you can move without a blink of a dime. In certain other states, you may have to pay money if you go outside of your district. So depending on where you live, definitely research your options for schooling for your child. And even though that there's a shortage of special educators nationwide, like they're saying, that still doesn't mean that the school cannot provide some level of support for your child. Get your data, get your team, make sure your kid is in the best situation possible early. Don't wait, because the process could take longer depending on where you are.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
definitely, and if you get if your child you're getting behavior reports, behavior issues from the school system, tell them you want a behavior intervention plan. Tell them you want a behavior assessment. I want you to watch my kid, do some analysis. How are they doing? What are the antecedents? What precedes bad behavior, et cetera, et cetera. And then they can put together a plan that's documented, that's tracked. Here is what the teacher's going to do, what special ed is going to do, et cetera, et cetera. Here is the school's plan for helping your child develop the skills they need to behave better in this environment. So, I mean, if you got an IEP and your kid has any suspensions or other issues, behavior outbursts and whatnot, you can ask for intervention specifically on that. So think about that too. A lot of times our kids, like my son, has some expressive, receptive speech delays, and so he's way better now today than he was 3 years ago. But at one time, he couldn't tell you what was going on necessarily, what was bothering him, and it might show up in behavior. And so, to that end, get that behavior intervention plan in place to help you understand my kid acts up when he's in gym. Gym is too much for my kid. I know gym is mandated in those places, but this ain't gonna work. I need adaptive gym. He won't work in this gym with 30 kids running around bouncing balls. That's a problem. That's a behavior. That's a fight. And so just think about that, getting that behavioral support if you need it sooner rather than later.
No, agree. And to be clear, everybody can't move their kid around, different circumstances, different situations. Like Nick was saying, there's different, states that have different rules where you can't move your kid around. So in those cases, if you can't take your kid out of school and you can't move them around as easily, definitely keep fighting. Keep fighting, because no one's going to advocate for your child like you. And build your team as strongly as possible. Make sure you have all the data and facts to support your arguments, because they will argue back and they will try to make a case on their behalf and recommend 504 plans and all of that stuff. And no, you don't want a 504 plan. You want an IEP. Do the best that you can in the situation that you're in if you're not, able to move your child. So
Let me
go ahead.
can I say something? Well, I
Yeah.
will say this: 504 plans come under reasonable accommodations. So they're supposed to be under the reasonable accommodations law. There's a law for reasonable accommodations. So it's supposed to be under there. But the difference is that reasonable accommodations doesn't change the education inside of the classroom the way an IEP can. A reasonable accommodation could be, your son gets a fidget, or your daughter gets a fidget in the classroom. That's a reasonable accommodation. But an IEP could say the instruction needs to be X, Y, and Z in order for the child to be able to learn something. So in my experience, the difference between the two is your IEP can directly affect the instruction given to your child. But both of them, depending on who you ask, let me put that up there. Depending on who you ask, both of them are supposed to be protected by law, but different laws. There's a regional accommodation law, and then there is the IDEA Act, which IEP is supposed to fall under. So, but definitely research in your area. And if you have to go into a school with, battle on your mind to protect your baby, have your documentation and your data and your information and your team readily available, and then kick in the door, waving the 4-4, and keep it moving like you fighting for your baby.
Oh no! Thank you for the information, man.
Old Testament.
For sure. Well, hey, another episode in the books. Thank my brothers Nick and Lonnie again, just for their information and making this this podcast as strong as it can be. So another episode, Autism, Black Files and Autism, and we are out.
I love you, Heartworm.